The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the world bathed in shadows. As the last glimmer of daylight faded, Mark found himself alone on a desolate highway, surrounded by an impenetrable darkness. The hum of his engine was the only companion in the eerie silence that enveloped the night. Mark was a seasoned night driver, often traversing long distances for work. On this particular evening, he had set out on a familiar route, a stretch of road that cut through dense woods. The towering trees loomed over the asphalt, their branches creating an intricate canopy that swallowed the feeble glow of his headlights. As the miles rolled by, Mark couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched. It was a subtle unease that crawled up his spine, making him glance nervously in his rearview mirror. The reflection of the empty road stared back at him, but an inexplicable sense of dread lingered in the air. The radio crackled, and static filled the car. Mark fumbled with the dial, searching for a station that could pierce through the interference. Amidst the garbled voices and distorted music, he caught snippets of a strange message, words that sent shivers down his spine. The unsettling transmission spoke of a lone driver haunted by unseen forces, warning him to turn back before it was too late. Chalking it up to a bizarre radio glitch, Mark dismissed the message and continued his journey. The winding road seemed to stretch endlessly before him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were closing in, conspiring to keep him company. As he approached a desolate gas station, its flickering neon sign casting an eerie glow, Mark decided to pull over and refuel. The silence outside was oppressive, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. Mark shivered, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on him. The gas station attendant was an elderly man with weary ease that seemed to hold a lifetime of stories. Mark struck up a conversation, seeking solace in human interaction. The old man spoke of the woods that border the highway, cautioning Mark about the secrets they held after dark. Legends of restless spirits and ghostly apparitions echoed in his tales, adding fuel to the unease that had settled in Mark. Determined to shake off the unsettling atmosphere, Mark thanked the old man and resumed his journey. The highway stretched ahead like a never-ending ribbon of asphalt, and the woods on either side seemed to draw closer, their shadows dancing in the moonlight. The radio crackled again, and the same haunting message filled the car. Mark's heart raced as he listened to the disembodied warning, urging him to turn back. Doubt gnawed at him, but he pressed on, determined to reach his destination. As the night wore on, the darkness deepened, and Mark's sense of isolation intensified. The road became a narrow corridor hemmed in by towering trees, their branches creating a tunnel of blackness. An eerie fog began to slither across the asphalt, further obscuring his vision. Suddenly, the headlights flickered, casting the road into momentary darkness. Panic gripped Mark as he fumbled for his flashlight, scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. That's when he saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the edge of the road, its form barely discernible in the gloom. As Mark's car approached, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind a chilling echo of laughter that reverberated through the night. Trembling, Mark slammed his foot on the gas pedal, desperate to escape the spectral encounter. The radio crackled one last time, the voice now a mere whisper, bidding Mark farewell and warning him never to return. Alone in the inky blackness, Mark drove on, haunted by the inexplicable events of that night, forever wary of the shadows that lurked in the lonely stretches of the highway. The night was pitch black, and the road stretched out like an endless ribbon disappearing into the void. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white as she navigated the desolate highway. She had always been cautious about night driving, but tonight was different. She was alone, surrounded by an oppressive darkness that seemed to press against the windows of her car. The only companionship Sarah had were the rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional flicker of her headlights cutting through the obsidian night. The air inside the car was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant howls of coyotes and the rustling of unseen creatures in the surrounding woods. As she drove deeper into the night, Sarah's imagination started to play tricks on her. Shadows danced at the periphery of her vision, and every rustle of leaves seemed like a sinister whisper. She chastised herself for being paranoid, blaming it on the countless horror stories she had heard about night driving. In an attempt to shake off the unease, Sarah turned on the radio, hoping that music would drown out the eerie silence. But as the first notes filled the car, a strange voice cut through the melody. It was a voice that seemed to come from nowhere, a spectral presence in the airwaves. The voice spoke of a lonely stretch of road, warning drivers of an otherworldly entity that lurked in the shadows, preying on those who ventured into the night alone. Sarah's heart raced as the voice continued, recounting chilling tales of encounters with this mysterious entity. The stories felt too vivid, too real to be dismissed as mere fiction. She glanced nervously in her rearview mirror, half expecting to see something materialize in the darkness behind her. Determined to shake off the growing sense of dread, Sarah pressed on. The road seemed to narrow, the dense forest on either side closing in like a vice. The overhead branches formed a natural canopy, blocking out the moonlight and casting the road into an inky abyss. The radio voice persisted, each warning more ominous than the last. It spoke of lost souls wandering the woods, of a presence that could only be sensed when the world was shrouded in darkness. Sarah's rational mind told her it was just a prank or a bizarre radio transmission, but the stories wormed their way into her thoughts, festering like a seed of fear. As she rounded a bend, the headlights caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure standing at the roadside. Sarah slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. But when she looked again, there was nothing but the impenetrable blackness. She hesitated, the engine idling, the night closing in around her. Then, a whisper echoed through the car, chilling her to the bone. "Turn back," it urged, the words hanging in the air like a spectral command. Sarah's hands trembled on the steering wheel as she weighed her options. The stories, the voice, the shadows, they all merged into a surreal nightmare. In the end, fear won. With a shaky breath, Sarah made a U-turn on the empty highway, retracing her path through the haunting night. The radio fell silent, and the oppressive darkness seemed to lift as she left the lonely stretch of road behind. Alone in the car, she glanced back one last time, half expecting to see a ghostly figure fading in the distance. But there was nothing, only the empty road disappearing into the night. The stories lingered, etched into her memory, a cautionary tale that would forever make her think twice about driving alone in the darkness. The night was a cloak of impenetrable darkness, and Emma found herself navigating a desolate stretch of highway that seemed to stretch endlessly into the void. The dim glow of her headlights barely penetrated the thick blackness that enveloped the road, creating an eerie tunnel of uncertainty. It was the kind of night that sent shivers down one's spine, a night that whispered untold stories to those brave enough to listen. Emma had always been a night owl, but this particular drive was different. A sense of isolation clung to the air, and the silence was deafening. The only company she had was the rhythmic hum of her engine and the haunting echoes of her own thoughts. As the miles rolled by, Emma's imagination began to play tricks on her. The trees lining the sides of the road morphed into sinister silhouettes, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. She shook off the irrational fear, telling herself it was just her mind playing games in the dark. Attempting to break the oppressive silence, Emma turned on the radio. The soothing melodies of a classic rock station filled the car, momentarily alleviating her unease. But as she drove further into the night, the radio signal began to waver, and a strange voice cut through the music. It was a voice that seemed to come from another realm, a voice that spoke of the supernatural. The voice warned of a phenomenon known as the night drifters, mysterious entities that roamed the lonely highways after dark, seeking solace in the company of unsuspecting drivers. Emma scoffed at the absurdity of the story, dismissing it as a radio prank or some elaborate hoax. Yet, as the voice continued to narrate chilling encounters with the night drifters, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her skepticism was unraveling. The stories painted vivid images of shadowy figures appearing on the roadside, vanishing when approached, leaving behind an inexplicable sense of dread. The road ahead seemed to coil like a serpent through the heart of an ancient forest. The towering trees leaned in, casting elongated shadows that danced in the periphery of Emma's vision. The air inside the car grew heavy, and a peculiar stillness settled over the surroundings. A sudden flash of movement caught Emma's attention. She squinted into the darkness, her eyes desperately trying to make sense of the shadows. Was it just a trick of the night, or something more ominous? The radio voice persisted, now almost a whisper, urging her to stay vigilant. As she rounded a bend, the headlights illuminated a figure standing at the edge of the road. Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively hit the brakes. The figure, cloaked in darkness, turned to face her, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes met. Two souls connected across the impenetrable veil of night. Terrified, Emma slammed her foot on the gas pedal, the engine roaring to life. The radio voice faded into static, and the road unfurled before her like a ribbon of escape. She drove on, leaving the haunted stretch of highway behind, the memory of the night drifters etched into her consciousness. As dawn broke on the horizon, Emma's car emerged from the darkness, and the first light of day chased away the remnants of the night's terrors. She glanced in her rearview mirror, half expecting to see the lingering shadows of the night drifters, but the road behind her was empty, a testament to the surreal nature of the night she had just endured. Emma continued her journey, forever haunted by the stories of the night drifters, a cautionary tale for those who dared to traverse the lonely highways after the sun had set.